If I had my way, everything would be so nice. This world would be like Paris. No, it would be a paradise. No one would ever have to say, I'm gonna get my wish someday. All one would have to do is say, this is my order, if you may.
Welcome to another episode of The School Without Walls. I am the host and founder, Antonio Hobbs, and this is the fourth segment of a program prepared for the month of February, Black History. However, my guest at this time is one of my sons. I'm the father of three sons. The first one is Antonio Hobbs Sr. Jr. Then I have here with me Walter El Visto Hobbs, and the third one is Marshall Kevin Hobbs. And he is a minister, therefore I shall refer to him as Reverend El Visto, Reverend El Visto, okay? Reverend El Visto, my son, glad to have you with me here. How are you today?
Oh, it's a pleasure, Daddy, Dr. Hobbs. Mm-hmm. It's always a pleasure to share a place in a public spotlight with you, and it is as though I first shared the pulpit with you, and that was a historical and satisfying and gratifying moment. Now I'm sharing your TV program, so it continues on. So I am thoroughly excited and highly honored to sit here next to my daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And I refer to him as Daddy because our daddy is a special person as opposed to the formal speaking of our male progenitor as father.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad has done quite a bit for me throughout my life. He has taught me a great number of things. Many of the things that I've learned in life on the educational realm was from him. He's been more like he has been my personal teacher throughout my life.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate those remarks. So tell the public a little bit about your formal education. I know what it is, but you graduated from what school?
I recently graduated.
The first school, in the high school.
I graduated, my beginnings began in Marianna, Arkansas. I graduated from Lee Senior High School in 1978.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I went into the United States Navy,
mm-hmm.
which I spent 3 years active duty and 5 years in the inactive reserve. Currently, I'm still serving in the United States Navy Reserve. I have a total of 20 years in the Navy with 15 years of active service and 5 years of inactive service.
Mm-hmm.
And my formal education, post-high school began at UALR, but I started at University of Arkansas at Little Rock, but I completed my undergraduate degree at Philander Smith College,
mm-hmm.
which is a historically black college.
What was that degree in?
And it was in psychology.
Psychology. Mm-hmm.
And I studied quite a bit about I had nearly a minor in education, mm-hmm. which is education I truly believe is a God-given talent that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And currently I'm pursuing careers in education. And my most recent accomplishment was a Master of Education in School Counseling at Montana State University.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to Philander Smith, like many of our African Americans, this I think could lead into this discussion about African Americans and education.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Many of our African American youth in the past and today have a strong desire to go to a university. And if we would take a survey, I would be willing to believe it's primarily a white university.
Mm-hmm.
And what has been found is that many of our students, like myself and my brother, who attended white universities, we got our undergraduate degrees. We left those predominantly white universities and acquired our undergraduate degrees at a historically black college.
Wait, say that again now? You Say that again, I'm missing it. Now, the graduate degree was second, so the undergraduate degree was at which university?
It was at Philadelphia Smith.
Predominantly black.
Predominantly black, but my point is we started with a white university.
Okay, and you switched back to?
And we came back to our own people.
Why was that?
And my reason was because, number one, just a better chance at acquiring a degree. You didn't face the racial discrimination that you'd encounter at white universities.
You mean racial discrimination existed during your time?
Oh, yes.
Okay, give me an example of what you meant by that in the predominantly white school.
Whereas I had a professor, his name was Dr. Hans Baer. He taught me cultural anthropologist. And he was the first white professor that had ever come to me that didn't grade me totally by my test scores. He graded me according to my contribution to the class.
I see.
And therefore I made a B in his class. And whereas other white professors, they didn't even present those type of remarks or opportunities for us. They didn't go that
Strictly
extra
test, more or less test.
test, whatever score that you made on a test, that was it. And it was it wasn't personal at all. You didn't develop a personal relationship with your instructors, especially at a larger university such as University of Arkansas.
Look, we have about a minute in this side. I want to come in on that because it's so important, I think, for the African American youth who has not been properly trained at home to understand what you're saying, is to first go to a predominantly black, a traditional black school, like the University of Arkansas for his undergraduate. Then he will be better prepared to deal with masters and higher education in a traditionally white school. That would be to their advantage because there's so much more to education than just the grade. It's the interaction, the culture, the so forth and so on. So the real world they got to deal with. I believe the first segment is up, right, Randy? And we'll be back in just a few minutes to conclude. You're going to have another chapter, another segment.
When you're out there, there's no telling what you'll find.
I see it, I see it! Oh, look at you.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host of this educational program, interviewing my son, the Reverend Walter L. Visto Hobbs, who is now residing in Montana. In the past segment, he was mentioned that he has earned a master's degree in educational counseling. El Visto, you might continue discussing. What I would like for you to do is talk to me about your work in Montana. You've worked with quite a few Native Americans up there. Is that right? And the correlation between the plight of the African American and the Native American, and as much as this segment is really trying to talk about contemporary African American history and culture. Kind of tie that in, if you will.
First of all, I actually live on the Crow Indian Reservation in south central Montana, and I've been adopted into the Crow Indian families, and I accepted the Crow way of life, which is the word Crow is their common name for it. Just the Crow Native American, that is a misnomer. Their actual name is the Apsalaga, Apsalaga people, which is translated into the long beak bird. And just like we'll call black people, our actual identity is African American. And in this Montana educational system, one of the things that stands out to me is that the state of Montana recognized the disparity between non-Indians and the Native American as far as teaching them how to learn. So any educator in the state of Montana that is acquiring an education degree or any study in education, you're required to take an Indian education course. It is a law is termed Indian Education for All. And the goal of that is to teach non-Indians how to teach Native Americans. And I see the correlation between the Native American and the African American. And then throughout my travels, I've been 3/4 of the way around the world. The Native American and the African American, we share our background and our past is very common. We share so many things in common. And they're probably the closest group of people in the U.S. with a background such as ours. Now, here in the state of Arkansas, I've been an educator here, and it hasn't, I'm asking you, is it required that a teacher is it required to take any African American history?
Not that I know of. I've never seen that in the curriculum at all. Matter of fact, I've been in sessions where I've suggested that especially the white teachers should take a course to make them more sensitive, I mean in high school and junior high and elementary, more sensitive to the difference in the two cultures. But our system pretty well seemed to expect the African American child to behave as though he was European American.
Correct.
And that's a serious problem that we're having. Hopefully that somebody of power might hear what we're saying and do something about it. Time is the essence now. What I want you to do now is talk about this scout that came with the Sitting Bull?
No.
Talk about that scout that led, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
That's an African American.
Right. One of the greatest explorers in U.S. history, his name was James Beckwourth. He was an ex-slave. I don't have the exact bio, but he was an ex-slave from Virginia.
What was his name again?
James Beckwourth. It was commonly known as Jim Beckwourth. And he was one of the great American scouts that are they're very rare. I haven't ever seen his name mentioned in the history books.
Even in Western movies, right?
Even in Western movies or anything of that nature. But Jim Beckwourth, he came to the Crow tribe and he was accepted into their tribe, and he was named the war chief for his style of fighting. But for his American history, U.S. non-Indian history goes, he was the first non-Indian through the Sierra Nevada Pass. In California today, you have a pass in the Sierra Nevada mountain called Beckwourth Pass. Now, the importance of the Beckwourth Pass is that prior to that, no non-Indian knew how to get through the Sierra Nevada mountains over into California. So he was employed to take settlers through that pass into California, primarily during the gold rush.
I see. Okay.
But he's not mentioned in
our history book.
We have
about 2 minutes. Did you say you played a role? Tell us about that, because we have 2 minutes in Montana when they were doing reenactment.
Each summer we have Native American Days on the Apsalaga Reservation, and we do the reenactment of the Battle of the Little Bighorn River, where Custer was killed. But in the course of doing that, the narrator, Henry Reilberg, he tells the history of non-Indians coming into Montana.
2 minutes, okay.
And I introduced the fact about Jim Beckwourth, and now during those Crow days, prior to the reenactment, he has introduced Jim Beckwourth and give a background history of Jim Beckwourth, and also he explained how Native Americans, especially the Crow tribe, would accept the ex-slave into their communities.
Mm-hmm. And you played the role?
I played the role each year of Jim Beckworth.
Mm-hmm.
And it is actually where it's reenactment on the Crow Indian Reservation is the actual site. The Real Bird family owned the actual site that Custer was killed on.
Mm-hmm. Briefly before we close, shout out to some of your friends, because this will be seen on national TV. Give the names of some of those that you're close to, would you like to say hello to?
Oh, I would love to say Shodai J, which is hello in the Crow language.
Mm-hmm.
And to the Real Bird family, to Mervyn White, Frenchie Dillon.
Mm-hmm. How do you say hello again?
Shodai J.
Shodai J.
Shodai J.
Uh-huh.
And the Real Bird family, Mervyn White. Mervyn is my brother. Billy Backbone, and I was actually given a Native American name, actual ceremony, naming ceremony in last May. My name is the person that stays in the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my friends, when you're giving out names, I would just like to shout out to the Apsalagat Nation. That way I'll cover everybody and no one's feelings will be hurt. Because they've been really instrumental in my survival in Montana.
Let me add this to the record too, just for the information. El Visto, what is it? I'm trying to get this thing. My grandmother's supposed to be Crow Indian. That's sort of a coincidence how you wind up with the family. Right. Briefly, I'll make it quick. You got that because of the military, right? That's what got you in that area. And they fell in love with you, and I was wondering if there's some providential thing connected with it, since what would be your grandmother?
Great grandmother.
Yeah, my grandmother from my daddy's side was supposed to be Crow Indian, and here you're up there in love with the Crow people. Randy, it's time about up. Glad to have you here. Well, that's it then.
Hi everyone, I'm Eric Spoelstra of the Miami Heat and a member of the NBA Fit team. I'm here today at the White House to find out why eating healthy can help you perform like a champion.
Well, I eat fruits and vegetables every day because it gives me the energy I need to perform at the top of my game.
Thanks, Dwayne. What about you, Ray?
Drinking water is an important part of my pregame routine so I can stay focused and refreshed. And you can take it from me, eating the right foods can help make you a better athlete.
Oh, Angel, ice.
Pretty good, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Being a dad can be tough.
No. What do you mean she's not coming?
When's the fairy princess coming?
Any minute now.
But when you're willing to do anything...
It is I, Cruz Zinkelpel. Okay, time for cake.
It's always worth it.
I know it's really you, Drew. I'm just pretending for the other kids.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Those of you who have just joined us, I'm Antonio Hobbs, host and founder of this educational program. Now I'm back with Mr. Reverend James M. Lamb, the author of this book that is before us, Black. Reverend Lamb, before I forget it, I want to say to you that you resemble a very close friend of mine named Chester Bailey, Reverend Chester Bailey, Reverend Lamb and Reverend Lamb and my friend Coach Chester Bailey could pass for identical twins. And I'm saying this especially because I'm going to send Coach Bailey a copy of this, and I want him to see you, okay?
That's
Y'all
interesting.
look so much alike, and I have a picture of him that someday you might see it. Now, I want you to tell us where people can find your book locally, the book here, your books, because I imagine the other two are at the same place. Is that right? Locally?
No. Well, you can find it at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble. Mm-hmm. My former books you can find on buy books on the web, in addition to the places I just mentioned. Mm-hmm. This book you can find at the Pyramid Bookstore. If you go to my website, which is www.recovery4me M.E.com. It will give you links to the books.
And what about Ephesus Bookstore here? Did you ever get any down here on 5th Street?
By the time this broadcast is aired, there'll be an Ephesus bookstore.
Okay. I also want to mention my book again. It's called Roots of the Races. It goes back to Noah and his 3 sons, and it's very condensed, and it's talking about the role that the so-called African has played throughout humanity. It's some of the things that Reverend Lamb is talking about is in this book. Reverend Lamb, this is the final segment here of, I believe, segment 4 pertaining to Black history. If we go back to the segment that I did before, the 3 that we were doing with you and my son, El Visto. Oh yes, it was the why I'm not African American, I'm American. I believe that was what we were going to start with.
Yes.
What is the significance of your writing on that? Some of our people say, I am not African American, I am American, and nobody else takes that position but that segment of the African American.
That's correct.
What's that all about?
That's actually the first chapter of the book, and it comes from an experience I had while I was in California. I had delivered a message. It was an Afrocentric message with a lot of information, powerful information about African empires. And a gentleman came up to me after the sermon was over. I was shaking hands with different people. And he was an elderly gentleman. He was well coiffeured, he was well dressed, well mannered. And he looked me straight in the eye and he shook my hand with firmness and looked at me and said, I am not African, I am American. And he said it with such force and not disdain, but just total rejection of his African heritage until I had to go home and really think about that. And I concluded that perhaps this gentleman had been striving to become an American, had gone through the Jim Crow era, had perhaps marched along with Martin Luther King and had struggled to attain rights to vote.
Probably
and
the military.
Ride on the front of the bus, probably served in the military and all these things. And his desire was to become a full-fledged American.
Right.
But he rejected his African heritage and history. And that was a major concern to me because almost all other races are proud of where they come from. The Japanese are proud of coming from Japan. Europeans are proud of coming from whatever country they come from. And they mention that. And for some reason, a large segment of our population as African Americans reject the African part.
Right. Because it has been portrayed in such a false fashion throughout the years. I want to segue into some things in conjunction to what you said. First of all, before I do this, I'm constantly thinking of how proud I was of my son, El Visto, being on my program today. I want this to be a part of history. I was very proud of him, and of course, I get that off my mind. Now we'll go on into, we are going to talk a little bit about Africans in America. I'd like to mention that group of Africans that were responsible for rice being in this country. You know, rice is a very important food in America, in the world, and they were called Gullah, the Gullah people of South Carolina. And we have a little time, I'll try to explain that. See, the Gullah people, we have 3 minutes, the Gullah people raised rice in Africa. See, rice was an African original plant. And when they brought the Gullah slaves to the Carolinas, they brought some rice with them, and the European Americans learned the importance of rice. They knew about rice, but they didn't know how to raise rice. So they it so happened that they employed those persons from Sierra Leone in Africa, where rice was really popular there, to come to the Americas to teach the Europeans how to raise rice. And of course, the Gullah people mostly lived in the islands out there in the Carolinas. They are U.S. citizens, but they're in the islands. And it is said that they retain about 80% of African language. There's no other group in America that has retained the African language like the Gullah people. And the reason was that was malaria. The malaria fever was very prevalent in the Carolinas, and the Europeans, the Africans could, it would not affect the Africans. So they maintained an isolation from the European Americans, and they allowed them to be foremen over the Africans, and they raised the rice down in the swamp areas of South Carolina, made great wealth. It was great wealth came from that. And to this day, many of them are isolated on the islands, and they speak with this peculiar accent, and their offsprings have come on land. They're called Geechee. The Geechee people speak with a distinct accent, right, to this day. I was working with a Mexican and a Geechee, got 1 minute, and this Mexican said to me, "Tony," he said, "you American full blood, right?" I said, "Yes." He says, "John, American full blood?" I said, "Yes." He was a Geechee. He said, "Tony, when you talk, I understand you. But when the John talk, I know nothing he says." And I had an opportunity to explain to him about the Geechee. Have you ever met any Geechees?
No, but I was privy to that conversation last night.
Yeah.
I'm proud to be in your presence. You are a wealth of information and knowledge. It's really something, the wealth and depth of the knowledge that you have.
Well, I certainly thank you. We can close on that note. Randy, is that about time about up? Would you say that again, please? I think it's a good note to close on for 2014, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you again.